Dylan Scott, the digital content producer with Techstars. Today, we're talking to Ethan Austin. Ethan is a Techstars legend. Not only is he a Techstars founder, he was also a managing director of a program, and now he's an investor where he's doing impact investing for outside ventures. Today, we'll be talking about early stage entrepreneurship. Ethan's going to tell us how he got into Techstars, what he did after the program, how he ended up as an MD, and what he did to transform his career as an entrepreneur into an investor. He's going to share insights, he's going to share advice, he's going to share learning, he's also going to share some jokes, and you're going to have a great time. So stay tuned and make sure to watch the entire episode. Leave comments and questions below and enjoy the show. Ethan, it's great to have you here. Thank you for being here today on the Founder Features interview show for Techstars. You are a very tenured alumni, mentor, MD from Techstars. I would love to hear the origin story of Ethan Austin at Techstars.
When you say tenured, that it starts to make me feel old, like I'm getting a Lifetime Achievement Award. So my story at Techstars, well, veteran, sure. Techstars, and I was just kidding. Techstars, yeah, has been, I don't know where I'd be, honestly, without Techstars. So I started my journey into tech. I started out of law school, and I started a company with my co-founder, Desiree Vargas Wrigley, called Give Forward back in 2008. And we started one of the very first crowdfunding platforms ever. It was us and Indiegogo. And then the next year, Kickstarter launched, and the year after that, GoFundMe launched. And then 5 years later, there was 1,000 platforms. But we started this in 2008, and we bootstrapped for 2 years because not a single person would believe in what we were doing. And we just kind of were cockroaches and kind of just stayed alive until 2010. In the very first class of Techstars Chicago. It was called Accelerate Labs back then. And Sam Yagan and Troy Hennicoff said, this thing might actually be something. And they selected us for that first class. The early years were very slow. The first year we did $6,000 in revenue. It was not a success by any, stretch of the imagination. By 2010, I think we'd maybe done, maybe $1 million in transactions. It still wasn't like a lot. And we were helping people, sorry to just go back. We were helping people raise money for their loved ones' medical expenses. So if you had a friend who had cancer, you'd set up a page for them, let them know they're not alone. On one side of the equation, people were saying, what can I do to help? On the other side, people were saying, I feel so alone and isolated. And so we were, a bridge to those people and allow them to contribute money, but also just like words of support and let them know like, hey, we got your back. We love you. In like the darkest moments that people felt like really loved. And we did that, and we got into that first class of Techstars, and it changed everything for us. And from there, David Cohen was one of our original angel investors, and 2 years later, he made all the intros for our seed round to Founder Collective and to first round capital, and like things just really started to take off. And I like to say that we went from the outside track. We were outsiders. My co-founder and I. I came straight from law school. She came straight from the Kauffman Foundation. In 2008, we were not the types of people, neither of us were technical. We had no business starting a business, honestly. And we weren't the types of folks that would get funded in Chicago. And, so we had to be scrappy for a couple of years. And if it wasn't for Sam and Troy picking us that first year, like, I don't know what would have happened. So always grateful for that on-ramp to the, to what I call the inside track.
Definitely. So you mentioned you felt like an outsider, and the name of your venture firm is also Outsider VC or Outside VC. What do you have to say to the founders who maybe feel like those outsiders, like they're not technical people, they don't come from a background where they knew they wanted to go into entrepreneurship, or they just didn't have the resources provided for them to sort of have that as an opportunity? Do you have any advice for those people that just need to take a different route?
Yeah, I think it's hard. I think it really is hard. And I think like the people, if you ask anyone who makes it to some exit or some level of success, and like most people aren't going to tell you it's because they were a genius or they had the right strategy. It's because they kept going and they ran through walls and they just kept going. And I think, if you come from the outside, maybe you have a chip on your shoulder, like, and you just keep going. And I don't think that there's anything magic. I think that is like the only thing that you can do is like stay alive long enough until you get a lucky break.
Mm-hmm.
And there's things you can do to increase your luck, right? Like I would be going to, pre-accelerators, and I'd be trying to get into, Techstars and YC, but those are hard, right? Those are when we were running Techstars, there was companies that had applied 3 times before they got into Techstars. But there's lots of resources in the communities even before that, and like start building that network, because I don't think anyone gets anywhere without someone pulling them up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's so many smart people out there. There's so many people that are working hard, and like if you can have someone pull you up and lift you up, that's how people kind of get onto that on ramp to the inside track.
Yeah, absolutely. And Techstars is a place where we highly value the network. I think it's if not one of the most prideful things that we have as a value add for why you join a Techstars program. So talk about what it was like after the program, and how you continue to stay in touch with your peers, some of the mentors that you had, and what that journey took you on.
Yeah, after the program, immediately after the program, we didn't have the idea of a lead mentor back then. In Techstars today, there's this concept of lead mentors. You might have 5 mentors that you work really close with in the program, and they're called lead mentors. And back then, there was no concept, but we had this person who was the equivalent of our lead mentor, this guy, Tim Krauskopf. And Tim had like created one of the original like web browsers that would become Internet Explorer. And he was in the browser wars with Mark Andreessen, and taking his company public for, $1 billion. And he was this titan, and like was helping us out. And we were just clueless, right? We were like, I don't know, 27. We didn't know anything about anything. And he was helping us out. And, fundraising is hard when you don't know what you're doing. And he put in the first angel check in. He put in $25K, and then he put in another $25K. And we got to pay an intern who'd been working for free, probably illegally. We didn't even know that at the time, right? Like for a year, and like, oh, we got to pay her some money, which was awesome. And like, then he gave us another $25K. We went out to raise our round, and he pulled in the next, it was a $500K round, and he pulled in $200K of that from buddies. And it was just like, when you're raising an angel round, you have the first 40% done. Everything in fundraising is about momentum, and like that helped propel our fundraising round. Like, to have the first 40% done was amazing. Became a board member, just helped us through every single instance. He helped us hire our first technical hire, because he was a CTO and we had no idea what we were doing. It's like major pivots. He was just so instrumental. And then like, I always think with Techstars, when I was running Techstars programs, I would tell people all the time, I'm like, the mentors are amazing. Don't get me wrong. Tim, my life would be completely different without Tim. Your MDs, I still talk to Troy and Sam all the time. Like, when I have problems and issues, 12 years later, there's 2 of my first calls, right? I think one of the things that's underrated about Techstars is your peer group. Like, your peer group becomes like you're going through the muck together. And so like, it's just hard, right? It's just like you've done this thing that's just like 3 months, and it's hard, and it's, it's a lot of fun, but it's hard. And you've gone through this really challenging thing together, and you stay close with those people for the rest of your life. Like, I have this fund now outside VC, and like so many of the people that were in my Techstars class are investors in my fund now, right? Like at least probably 5 or 6 of them are. There's one of them I tried to recruit as a partner. He said no, but he joined Techstars instead. Okay. But
so still a partner in a way.
Still a partner in a way, right? Like, he's an investor, and then he ran a Techstars program. I won't say which one. I won't call him out. Okay. But like, these are people that are going to support you for the rest of your life, right? And like, I've invested in some of their businesses. They've invested in, I joined a portfolio company, one of my portfolio companies once, and I had friends from my Techstars class invest in that portfolio company that I was at. Like, you're going to support each other the rest of your life. And it's just, if you take the time going through Techstars to really like dig in and like make those relationships last, it's like those are going to be your friends for the next 20 years.
Yeah, totally. And just even looking at your background, it's like founder, went through Techstars, worked at a portfolio company for Techstars, was an MD for programs. Like now you're doing investments. I'm sure you probably consider investing in some Techstars companies. Like it's just this entire circle. So it's really great
I,
to see someone
I
that's
cannot
remained.
pull away from it. It's like a black hole that even if I wanted to, I cannot pull away from it at this point in my life.
Yeah.
It's just very deep within what I do and who I am at this point.
Mhm. So you mentioned that you've got a fund now. So what was that transition like going from founder, entrepreneur to now investor? There had to be some road bumps along the way. I mean, I guess, walk me through that experience. Tell me what was so difficult about it, if it was hard or if it was easy, and if every entrepreneur should be, turning their companies around and investing afterwards.
It's not easy at all. I mean, when I applied for the Techstars, so I applied for the Techstars MD role at Techstars LA in 2017, and at the time, I'd only made one angel investment, and this guy Jason Seitz, who's Techstars chief investment officer, but he was an angel investor in my company, and I went to him. I said, "Look, I'm in this final interview, and I kind of have a bit of imposter syndrome. I'm like, I'm not an investor." And when he told me, which I think was really helpful, and I tend to tell this to other people who are looking to go into investing who feel the same way, especially at like the level of Techstars or pre-seed or accelerator level. He said, "Look, you were great at hiring at Give Forward, weren't you?" I was like, "Yeah, I was really great at hiring people." He's like, "That's what you're doing. You're hiring people." Like, when you talk about Techstars, the things that we would look at, we said we would look at 6 things, and that was team, market, product, traction. And so like you're really making a bet on people at the earliest stages, and that gave me a lot of confidence that I could do that job, because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm pretty good with people. Um, but you're learning every day. Like I still feel 6 years in like an imposter sometimes. I'm like, how am I doing this? Like how is it
Yeah.
possible? But like, there's no real qualifications for investor, and so um, I think you just it's kind of one of those things where you learn by doing, and you make some mistakes early on, and you learn, and you kind of start to recognize certain things, and you just keep getting better and better at it, and you hope 6, 7, 10 years in, you just continue to hone your craft.
So how do you deal with the imposter syndrome then when it does arise? Because that's something that anyone can experience, not just a founder or investor or someone looking to transition in between careers. Like everyone can feel it, and no matter what role. So what would you say have been some things that you've learned through the years of feeling that?
Yeah, well, literally everyone has imposter syndrome. So I once wrote a blog post that said, like, I think the title of it was "Nobody in the world knows what they're doing," and like the people at the height of like the startup ecosystem. I remember like Mark Andreessen tweeting it out and being like, "Yep," and I was like, "Oh, that made me feel pretty good." I'm like, that guy has no clue what he's doing, and you think of like the president of the United States, the most important person or powerful person in the world, when they go to the Oval Office, they've never done that job before. And they probably look around and be like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Right? Like, I don't, I probably, I can't say that on the air, but like, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I feel like that's true of like everyone. And, in becoming a parent, I think is a good way of realizing that literally no one in the world knows what they're doing. Because when you're a kid, you look up to your parents and you're like, well, your parents can do no wrong. They're right about everything. And like, my parents know everything. And then you become a parent and you're like, oh, I'm freaking clueless. I have no idea what I'm doing. And you realize your parents had even less information at their disposal than you do. And so like the whole world is kind of just bluffing. And so if you ever feel like an imposter, I imagine every other person in the room does too. And so I just keep that in mind whenever I feel insecure about it.
That's really great advice, and you make being a parent sound really exciting. So
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that.
it's kind of flying by the seat of your pants.
No, I mean it does. It seems really exciting. So uh, I doing some digging on your background, I saw that you were once displaced from a position at a notorious banana stand out on Balboa Island, right in California. I love that show, by the way. So that reference, like totally, that's like when you put that on your profile, you're hoping for someone like me to see that and be like, that was a good one.
That was usually my fun fact when I needed to do a fun fact. That my first job was the banana stand from Arrested Development, which I got fired from. And for the record, there's no money in it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned like there's no harm or there's no shame in getting fired for integrity. How do you feel like you can maintain integrity as an investor? Because I feel like some of the instances, it's like, you're investing to get return. But it seems like you have an approach where you're doing a lot more impact investing, and maybe you're investing for return, but you're also investing for other things like the future of our society, or the oceans, or climate change. There's a lot of things that go under impact investing, but can you explain your thought process on why you decided to go that route?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a short amount of time on this planet. Like my dad died when I was a kid, and says like, I think I'd give anything to get my dad back. But I think what I learned at an early age that I think takes a lot of people a lot longer in life to learn. It's just like we only have a short amount of time here. We don't know when our time's up. So from an early on point in my life, I was like, well, how do I make a dent in this universe? What can I do to to leave a mark, in the short amount of time I have here, like at the end of it, and not just like with work, but like with the things that you do, like with, I passed up a job at Facebook to lead, part of their impact team as they were launching that, to go travel down in South America with my wife and bum around and climb mountains and stay at hostels before we had kids, because that's an opportunity you never get back when you have kids. It's just different. And my God, I'd probably have a lot more money in my bank account right now if I took that job at Facebook, but I wouldn't pass that up for anything, right? It's like I had no regrets on that at all. It's like that was such an amazing, 4-month journey that helped shape me. And so, uh, why impact? It's like when you write the book at the end of your life, are you going to have interesting chapters to write about? And so, to me, it's more interesting. Like with Give Forward, we were able to save 10,000 lives, and like that's just really cool. Like I don't know how I'd do that again, honestly. But getting to invest in the next Give Forward, or the next whatever it might be, that's going to like move the needle and make people's lives better, I think is just really, it's just powerful and it's meaningful and it's more fun.
Hmm. Yeah. You want to have an actual impact with the investments that you make. Totally.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, what else? I want to, I want to increase, I want to put money in our investors' pockets, but like, what are we here for, right? Like, what's the point for me? At least for me, like, what is the point of not doing something that's meaningfully changing people's lives?
Hmm. Yeah, that definitely resonates with me. And I appreciate you sharing that information about losing your father when you were younger, especially because, I lost my father a few years ago. And so it's an experience like that, like losing a family member at an age before you would even consider that you might lose them, that you start to consider, what is the meaning of it all? Like, we do have a short time here. It's very finite. We can lose someone close to us or someone who's making a change in the world at any moment in our lives, and it's very difficult to come back from. Do you feel like losing your father at an earlier age affected or influenced your career or professional trajectory in any way?
Yeah, it shaped everything I do. I mean, I heard a podcast recently. It was Walter Isaacson, and he was talking about um, Elon Musk, and he was saying that he's interviewed all these entrepreneurs and stuff, and that they're always fighting some type of demons. And I wouldn't say that like losing my father was like a demon in the same way that I guess Elon Musk had a really traumatic childhood with an abusive father, but it's similar, right? It's like you're always, it's something that drives you, and it's always driven me. I think for positive, right? I think it's been a, like I said, I would do anything to get my father back. But the positive was that it just shaped who I am and how I view the world. And I try and make the most of it while I'm here.
Hmm. Yeah. So tell me exactly, how you decided to move into a role as an MD at Techstars, and what the most gratifying feeling was coming from that experience.
Yeah, so I applied originally for the MD role, and I was actually after Techstars, I was going to do something different. David, when I was winding down, get forward, David Cohen said, "Would you ever want to work at Techstars?" And kind of said it offhand, and uh, I said, "I don't know, David. I'm going to go travel in South America, and I'm going to take a year off because." After 8 years of brain damage of a startup, you just need some time to decompress. And when we came back to Los Angeles, it just so happened that Techstars LA was getting spun up, and I got a call from Techstars to say, "Hey, would you want to apply for this?" And so I did. But what I had actually been thinking I was going to do was completely outside of tech altogether. I For the last few years of Get Forward, like the thing that I was really most passionate about was mass incarceration and in like our criminal justice system. And I almost ran an organization called Defy Ventures, teaching entrepreneurship in prison. And at the last second, I got an offer to join Techstars, and I didn't get the MD role. I came in second for the role, and they offered me this role that was like kind of akin to like a principal at a VC firm, and they called it a director, and they kind of made it up. And I would do like part like PM role and part investor role, and I said I'll do this. And my thought process there was that I didn't know the nonprofit world. And I said, look, I want to create change within the system. I think there's a lot of injustices in the world. My co-founder was a female co-founder, and I saw all the time how hard it was for her to fundraise. People would look at me as if I was the CEO. I'm like, no, dummy, it's the smart one over here, and it's just harder, and so I thought maybe I can change the system a little bit from the inside, and from a world that I know, which was tech, versus going in this nonprofit world, which I don't know well. And so I chose to become an investor and almost took like a very different pathway. And then I took that role within Techstars, and I'll say candidly, like within Techstars, it was hard. Like no one had ever been promoted internally from my position before, and to an MD role, and like I had a better chance of getting the MD role from the outside than I did from the inside, which was frustrating, like to be honest. And it was like you almost became invisible. And if it wasn't for people advocating for me, so my MD was this woman named Anna Barber, and she was great, and she really pushed for me hard. And I wanted to apply for this role, and I talked to my boss, and Anna pushed for me hard. And had she not really pushed for me, I wouldn't have got the role. And I think I got really lucky. And at the same time, Techstars promoted me and a buddy KJ, who was running the Techstars New York program, from similar roles, and we both got promoted at the same time to MDs. And I think it was the first time they had done that. And I just think back, in my career, of like how much gratitude I have for people who stand up and like really go out on a limb and vouch for you. Because like that, again, think of all these pivotal moments in my career, like that changed my career. I was looking for other jobs at that point. I had an offer to run another accelerator, and I got this offer from Techstars, and that was amazing.
So when did you then decide to go and launch your own fund?
I decided to launch my own fund at the end of 2020. I got pulled out by a company that I tried to recruit in, and they instead recruited me out. I was very competitive, and I didn't ever like to lose companies. Trying to get them into Techstars, and they said no. And they said, come and join as our COO, and we did that, and we raised a seed round. And then I realized I can't work with this person. I just didn't see eye to eye with that person, and so I quit. Even really before I started, I had a month to find a job. My wife was pregnant. We were both kind of freaking out, and again, talking about the network, I didn't even tell a bunch of people, but I told like a handful of people. And I quickly got like 5 job offers, which I was very grateful for. But like 3 of them came from Techstars like network, and I ended up joining one of my portfolio companies, Gigwage, who it was an amazing like opportunity to work for, and like join one of the companies you invested in, and just work with an amazing team. And that was really, really cool. And I told Craig, the CEO, I said, Craig, I'm going to do this for like a year. Are you okay with that? He's like, I'm gonna start a fund. I needed all the companies that we'd invested in. I was like, this is a really killer class of companies, but it's going to take the world about a year and a half to see that. And I can't raise a fund without a track record. So I need all these companies to get marked up. And like when that happens, I'm going out and launching this fund because this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And then he's like, yeah, that's cool. And so he's like, you can even do it from here. I'm like, I can't because, it's too hard to do two things well at once. And so after about a year and a half at Gig Wage, all the companies were doing great and the world was seeing the same thing that we saw a year and a half ago. And we went off and kicked off that fund.
So you must seen your fair share of fundraising, like in very different verticals, because you have the nonprofit sort of crowdsourced fundraising. You have, fundraising as a founder working with an early stage startups to fundraise. And then you have this fundraising for an actual venture fund. Talk to me, walk me through those three different experiences, how they're all different, how they're kind of hard in the same ways, and some insights that you can share with some founders that are probably fundraising right now.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. I could go on and talk about this forever.
We might need to bring you in for another episode then.
Yeah, maybe we can talk about this. We actually, we knew crowdfunding, right? Like in the beginning, the first 2 years of crowdfunding, I would do customer service with like every single person on our site. And so and I literally wrote the book, it wasn't a book, but we wrote all these tips on how to crowdfund. And the thing with all of all of fundraising, it's all the same. It's all about momentum. It's all about perception, because people, whether it's crowdfunding or whether it's an investor like me or another investor out there, investors aren't as smart as people think. And they're susceptible to being persuaded. And you saw it all the time. We saw it all the time on Give Forward. Fund one, fundraiser one, had an incredibly compelling story. And fundraiser two had the equally compelling story. And fundraiser one did a lot of prep work ahead of time. And they primed the pumps and they got all of their strategies ready. And they were really smart about who they approached and when. And they might raise 50,000, and the other fundraiser that had an equally compelling story, which is the equivalent of someone's deck or their narrative if they're fundraising for a startup, they might raise $2,000. And you're like, why are these two things so different? Both these stories are incredibly compelling. And more often than not, and people don't talk about this a lot in the fundraising process, is a successful fundraise comes down to running a tight process. And how do you shift it to get momentum in your favor? Because it's either going to be, it's never neutral. It's either going to be in the investor's favor or it's going to be in your favor. And if you can shift it to get momentum in your favor and you can create scarcity, that's when things get exciting for you as a founder. That's when lots of people want to join. I'll give you an example, with crowdfunding.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. Because I was about to ask, how do you shift it to put the leverage and the momentum on your side? Are there actual actions that need to be taken place, or
is it I'll give you an example. With crowdfunding, we would always tell people, look, if you back then 80% of our traffic came from Facebook, and that's how everyone shared these things, right? People blast them out on Facebook. But if you blast it out on Facebook on day one of your campaign, everyone's going to look at your campaign. You're going to have $0 there. You're going to send it out to hundreds of people, and it's going to look like a dud. They're going to be like, no one wants to be the first person out on the dance floor. All right. So the other approach is this: do all the work up front. The people that did more work up front always did better. So what he'd say is look, all right, well, figure out 5 or 10 people who can give big chunks, right? And maybe a big chunk for you is $100, maybe it's $200, maybe it's $250. Find those people first, pull them in, be co-conspirators with them. Say, look, here's what we're doing. I need you to put in $200. You're my inner circle. I need you 5 people to do that, right? And maybe it's 10 people. And once they do that, we're going to start putting it out into the world. And then the next thing that happens is okay, you have a $200 average donation. Everyone then just follows that, right? People do exactly what other people see. So then your average donation size is $200. And when people come to it, all of a sudden now, oh, this thing already has some momentum. This thing looks like a winner. People want to back winners, right? And it could be the exact same thing but it's all about the perception. And so it's all up to that person to, I don't want to say manipulate, but to do the work ahead of time, to really like, to really like precede it with their insiders, so that when the rest of the world shows up, it has the momentum that they need. And that's true of crowdfunding. That's true of, fundraising as a founder. It's true as fundraising, as a VC, reaching out to LPs.
Mm-hmm. And so as a founder, how do you get the momentum before the round? Like, do you do angel rounds? You get those angel investments. What if you don't have people in your network that really, like, you have amazing product, amazing story, you have no access to capital. You've even gone through Techstars and it's still like nothing's there. What do you do? How do you fill in those gaps?
If you're pitching in like, and no one's investing, or you just don't have access to any investors. I think if you've gone through Techstars, you're going to have access to some investors, right? And it's still hard. Fundraising is hard no matter what. The thing I would be, you start to do, I mean, there's certain tricks, right? Sometimes you ask for help instead of money, right? When you ask for money, you get help. When you ask for help, you get money. And you pull those insiders in and you ask for help. Sometimes you ask for help, like, who might you know in your network who'd be interested? I know you're not interested, but who might you know? Not that they're not interested, maybe they don't invest. And what happens there sometimes is, A, either they introduce you to people, or B, sometimes introducing you to folks is harder than just investing themselves. Like, well, I'm going to just write you a check, right? And I think you just have to keep searching. And there's no magic bullets around angels. I think they're hard to identify. They're hard to find. But I'd start with the people who know you the best, right? Like, even if no one in your network, has any money, like maybe someone in their network does, right? And like, what are the loose affiliations that someone might have? Maybe someone went to the same school, or maybe someone, goes to the same church, or is in like a soccer league, or whatever it might be. I don't really know. But like, people invest when there's some type of an affiliation, like a shared affiliate. And I'd start there.
Yeah. And it's almost like building a reputation around being reliable too, and just like someone that you want to work with. Like, I feel like I've heard MDs and even just other founders speaking on other people in their programs, like the people who they connect with in their programs, they're almost like, I would invest in them simply because of the energy that they bring and like the character that they have as a person. And I feel like that kind of goes back to what you were talking to before about how when you took on this role as an MD, it was proposed to you as like, it's really just recruiting. Like, you're investing in the people, you're hiring these people. So I think, that's like, you're speaking to another dimension of how to gain momentum and reliability around raising money from people.
Yeah. Was there a question there?
No, it was just a reaction.
Okay. I think that's true, man. I think it's 100% true.
Yeah. Cool. So just one last question that I wanted to ask was, as an investor now and as a former founder, what would you say are the best qualities for a founder to have to be investable?
I think that's a great question. Here's what I look for, right? So like I kind of mentioned before, grit, and a lot of people will say grit, right? Like, I look for people who are passionate about something, because I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. You're just passionate about something. I wasn't looking to be an entrepreneur, right? And just kind of like something kept smacking me in the face enough times until I just like punch back, and I'm like, all right, I guess I'll just build this. So I look for people like, what's their origin story? Why are they doing it? And then like, one of my CMO back in the day, he gave me great advice. He said someone gave him this advice. He's like, look for people who've been top 1% in the world at something. And it's something that I've transferred over to investing. And I look for people, I think a lot of VCs are insiders. They went to the same schools, they worked at the same places, and that's the pattern that they're looking for. And not to say you're not going to do well following that pattern, but you're also going to miss some stuff, right? And so I think where you can find alpha, right, like how you have like great returns for your investors is finding the people that are off the radar before everyone else. The folks that are non-obvious, right? The obvious ones everyone's going to invest in. The non-obvious folks before, and like non-obvious ideas before it becomes obvious to the world, that's how you really like get outsized returns as an investor. And so like what I usually look for is like, are you top 1% in something you've done in your life? And so like I'll give you an example. Like the last company we led, the CEO, she went to Stanford. She was a CS major at Stanford. Then she taught human computer interaction, and she was a product manager at Google, LinkedIn. Her co-founder was a 10-year product manager at Google. Those are all the things that like traditional VCs look at. And for me, that wasn't enough. And I wanted to know what their story was and like, why are you doing this thing? And they'd quit what they were doing, high paid jobs, to work at this nonprofit for 6 months and interview lower middle income families about what the problems were. I'm like, well, why would you do that? And she's like, well, I grew up on food stamps, and I'm like, okay, like you're trying to solve your own problems. And like, that's your motivation. And then like, I asked them like, well, where have you guys been top 1%? And I don't care how weird and esoteric it is. And the answer came back. It's like, well, I used to be shy. And at one point in my life, I had a birthday party with 1,000 people invited to it. I'm like, that's wild. Cause I don't even know 1,000 people. That's crazy. Right. And like, then she said, well, I was in conservatory, for piano in high school and was like top 1% in the world. And so I think anyone who's been like great at one thing can be great at something else. And you don't usually get credit in the startup world, the VC world. It's like people want to see that you've been great at the thing you're doing now. And I think that's just a failure of imagination. Yeah. So that's really what I look for. I look for like, is this person great at something? Like they sold more Girl Scout cookies than anyone else in their troop. Whatever it might be, I think having a wider aperture for greatness and what is great is where I've had the best luck in finding founders that are just really truly amazing.
Yeah, that's a fantastic perspective, honestly. So I commend you for holding that.
Cool.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ethan. I really appreciated the time today.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Thanks everyone for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode and want to hear more stories from the Techstars Network, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out our other social media. If you're a founder looking to 10x your startup, do not hesitate to visit our website to apply to a program today. And most importantly, always remember, give first.